Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, February 6th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. Thank you, everybody. We have a full complement this evening. We'll start off with the confirmation of the modification of the posted meeting agenda. I don't know any changes, Gretchen, nothing? Nothing, right? You've received Jim's meeting notes. Everybody had a chance to review them. Any comments? Could I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Second, please.
Second, Sean.
Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. You've all received the draft January 17th minutes. Any corrections? Minutes? Could I have a motion to approve the January 17th minutes? Thank you, Ed. Second, please. Thanks, Delise. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Correspondence and announcements. Announce that Jim has pointed out to me, and we'll have a conversation about some meetings scheduled for later in the year. For example, July 3rd, which is a Monday and probably doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm assuming that that might be a long weekend for folks. So we're going to take a look at that and come back the next meeting. Does that make sense? Come back with the next meeting with some suggestions as to how we avoid those potential conflicts. After, I don't know if it's the last meeting or the meeting before, Craig raised the question, and it has also come up relative to HAPAC as to whether the process of communication could be improved if there were a liaison between the planning board and those two advisory groups. And so I had the opportunity to check with our planning board attorneys, Kim Garrison and John Lyons, and they see absolutely no reason why we could not do that, and indeed actually encouraged us to try and use that mechanism to improve direct communication. And so the authority vested in me. If Craig is interested in serving, I would like to ask him to serve as the liaison from the planning board to CAB, and I will volunteer to serve as the liaison to HAPAC. You think I'm best to have a motion for that, or is that just an official? Thank you, Michael. Could we have a second?
Second.
And how about discussion? Anybody like to offer comments about that?
Sounds like a good
Just that
idea.
they're going to still be submitting their reports, they're going to be still submitting the same information, it's just going back to what the projects would be one person instead of this.
I think it's more of, and George Baker's here from CAB, and George, maybe you'd like to share why you think that would be useful for CAB.
Well, in addition to delighting in Craig's company, I think any additional channels of communication between us and the planning board, we don't have anyone on really, save for Sharon, that's got a long history with planning board experience, so we invariably have questions, and it's great to have somebody who we can turn to for those, and more the merrier.
And oftentimes in my experience, you know, the CAB or HAPAC are struggling with an application without knowing how it is impacted by a planning board process or something like that. So a lot of times the questions have to do with process and not necessarily the mechanics. I did clarify with John, we would not be there on those committees to influence them. We're there to provide information and support, but the processing of the information, the deliberation, and the ultimate report and recommendations should be those of the individual committee board. It is not a way for us to provide influence in any way. We're not trying to influence their decision, but to be there more as a resource. Does that make sense? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thanks, Craig.
Okay, thank you.
I think we can move to new applications. The first up is Elaine Tavoy. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Heights on the Hudson, 12 Loftus Road. This is site plan review and special use permit. up and introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like to do.
Hello, I'm Mike Beamer, an architect with Josh Payne Architect. We are working with the owners of this site to renovate the existing structure into a single-family home. This is a building that was originally built in the 1860s as a rectory in Rhinecliff, adjacent to St. Joseph's Church on the hill above Rhinecliff. Over the years, there have been a number of additions and modifications to the original house, and such that not much of the original house is visible currently. In this site plan, you can see the original house is the middle portion. There's an addition to the back and an addition to the front. The addition to the back is from around the turn of the century, 1900, and the addition to the front is from around the 1980 or so. Yeah, I guess on the site plan, there's not too much more to say other than that there's the existing septic on site is not functional, so there's a new septic system that's going into the project as a part of that. I think the next page might be the proposed site plan. Yeah, so you can see the proposed septic. The new house is basically taking off the additions that were added to the original structure, trying to understand what the original house was and kind of bring new life into it and respecting the character of the original house. There's two additions to that original footprint, one to the northeast and one to the southeast. And those are both basically 1 story above grade. For each of those additions. There's a separate PDF that goes through some of the architecture if you want to look through some of that. So this is some photos of the exterior of the existing house. Really, the main part of the original house that you can see is as you approach from the driveway, the gable end there. This is the front addition from the 80s, and then these are the additions off the back that I think were kind of over time. There was an addition probably around 1900. The porch is here, was enclosed at some point. There's additional additions that kind of bump off in various places. The house currently is wrapped in vinyl siding and vinyl windows, and is in poor condition overall. So it's a major rehab to the structure. Some interior photos, kind of divided up by floor of the house. And these are photos of the portion that was original, the rear addition, and the front addition by floor. This is showing the research that we did into the original structure. So this is actually all of the historic photos that we could find, about 5 of them. And kind of walks through the time frame of the house and as it was added onto and reconfigured and used in different ways. The diagram down here is a bit too small, but that shows basically the years that, as far as we can narrow down of each of those additions. And then given this current state of the house, a lot of the original kind of fabric of the house is no longer present, and so we're turning to local contemporary houses to kind of draw inspiration for the detailing of this house. So on the right, on that last sheet, there are a few houses in Rhinecliff and Rhinebeck that we're calling out specific details that we're referencing in that side of this house as it looks. Yeah, and I think that's the main. We have elevations as well. Overall, we tried to maintain, as best as we could, the look of the house, maintain where windows are and the sizing of them. There are a few that were slightly enlarged, mainly in the attic space, the arched windows on each side. The original windows are very small. And we're really getting views of light out that the owners wanted. And the only other one is on that front. There's 2 windows that line up with the door below in the center. That's currently a single window.
Jim?
So I have a couple comments. I think most of my comments really come back to a discussion, as a lot of our applications have recently, of historic preservation and implementation. I guess the first one is, during the pre-con, we'd asked for phase 1A and 1B. So I guess, I don't know, Melanie and Michael, I'd asked if you think that, I don't know if I was submitted separate, I didn't see one. I don't know if this was intended to be that, if that would suffice, or if we need a full 1A and 1B.
Well, the 1A and 1B was related to the use of the substantial amount of ground disturbance.
Have you,
So
have you got
the-
it? Looked
actually-
into that?
Andy, would you mind, the civil engineer, if you don't mind, come up to the mic?
Yeah.
Sure, yes, please.
Good evening, Andy Video with Taconic Engineering. We have actually started a consultation through the CRIS system with SHPO to have them review the archaeological census aspect of the site to get their feedback.
I'm confused. SHPO doesn't normally do it. You normally contract with somebody.
No, we're looking for their feedback to see whether or not it warrants that, because it's a historically disturbed site, because there's the cemetery to the north, the church. So
Right.
oftentimes, if you're in an area that has an archaeologically sensitive kind of bubble from their mapping system, a lot of times they'll say, well, it's been historically disturbed, there's been fill, there's been cut, there's a house built there, does it warrant,
But the
pre-
recommendation came from our archaeologists.
I'm sorry?
The recommendation to do it came from our archaeologists.
Right, so yeah, and we're talking with SHPO, who's the authority, if you will, on archaeologically sensitive areas, to see whether or not they recommend it, so we can provide that information to the
No,
board.
Olivia, if I could, I think that one of our main concerns was the excavation necessary for the new septic system.
For the septic, yeah, they're aware of that, so we sent them the
That's, I
site.
think, what we had asked for. And SHPO's very nice and they're very helpful, but if we ask for it, we expect to get it.
Yeah, understood. So that's, yeah, ultimately,
Well, the only reason I'm saying it is, if you're waiting for SHPO to give us a recommendation and we don't agree with SHPO's recommendation and we ask for it, we'll ask for it again.
sure.
So you're maybe
Understood.
losing time where we're going to require you to do that.
Okay, understood. Yeah, by all means. We were just going to the regulatory body, not regulatory body, but the body that normally handles archaeologically sensitive sites, seeking their feedback. If the board is keen on pursuing that outside of their
I'm very
potential
familiar with how
recommendation.
SHPO works since I worked for SHPO. And so, or state parks. And I do know that they do not necessarily know as much locally about every property as our own local
Sure.
archaeologist
Sure.
would. And Craig is nodding his head because I think SHPO will look at it from a superficial perspective, but because we know this area better and we feel it's sensitive, that's the reason we gave you the direction we did when we met in pre-con.
And what was that direction?
To engage in a phase 1A and B.
I see.
I just wanted to make sure that this was not considered by law, so I wanted to have that
That is
discussion.
not, that's a timeline of the historic structure, which is not.
No, we haven't had a phase 1A and B conducted yet, no.
Okay.
So we consulted SHPO. If the board, pre-consultation is one thing. If the board is affirmatively saying, no matter what SHPO says, we want phase 1A and B, we'll pursue that.
If I'm correct, we went to the archaeologist on PAPAC and asked for opinion, and that's what we got back.
Okay, great, thank you.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Jim.
so other quick comments, and I think you already know this, you'll need county health department approval, obviously you're doing it with septic.
It's in progress.
I think the board needs to talk about whether or not, and I think it's pretty obvious, a certificate of removal is needed, and related specifically to which elements are coming down. The historic preservation section of the code requires that to be considered. I know one of the additions we say is a little bit newer, in the 80s, I guess, but one is definitely older. So I think there's a significant discussion to be had there. related to that removal and as it relates specifically to that part of the code for a removal permit. The driveway you propose is all gravel. I think I've talked with the town highway department on whether or not you need any pavement right at the edge of off this road. I'm not sure they're going to allow gravel all the way to the edge. Usually there's a like pavement there, so you can washouts and things. But you should probably talk to the highway department anyway, just to make sure they're okay with the driveway location and changes.
Our previous driveway, we were introducing a second curb cut, and we've since gotten rid of that, and so it's an existing curb cut, and it's an existing gravel driveway, but we can check with them and see.
It is, we're doing improvements to the site, so that's when we like to talk about this stuff. So definitely catch up with the town highway department just to see if they have any comments. And then the only other question that I had at this point in time is just to confirm the number of bedrooms that you're proposing in here. I saw a note on the site plan that said it was 4. I think during the pre-conference we talked about 5. So I just wanted to go through a discussion of what is proposed and kind of where they are, so we know what we're looking at.
So the design is really 3 bedrooms plus a flexible room that we understand could be considered a bedroom. So for the application, we're calling it 4. During the pre-conference, I think there's discussion of the attic being considered a 5th bedroom. There's no intention of use for that as a bedroom, and none of the windows meet the egress requirements for it to be a bedroom. So our intent is for it to be a 4-bedroom house. So that's that.
4 bedrooms with an attic space that doesn't have egress windows.
Right.
Okay.
And no bathroom proposed for.
No bathroom as well.
Jim, is that it?
Yep. That's,
Planning board members?
Jim, what was your comment about an issue with the demolition?
well, there's no issue, but there is a specific part of the code related to demolition of historic structures, and that a demolition permit would be necessary. With the house that's going on, part of the house that's proposed to be demolished is from the 80s, and part of it, I think you heard earlier, is from the early 1900s. So I think we have to have specific discussion about which sections of the house are which, and if there are any concerns about any of the demolition that's supposed to take place.
Might we be getting some advice back from Rhinebeck when they make their site visit?
Oh, we would expect some, sure.
We make it somehow in the listing of the structure, what was considered contributing, what was considered not, if they were that detailed in terms of doing the designation, put it on the list, and would not have.
Was this previously used as apartment units?
So the most recent usage was like a nursing care, like an adult long-term care facility.
Like an assisted living kind of thing?
Yes.
And how many units was it?
I believe it was 10 units. Yeah. And so, yeah, the existing square footage is probably 3 times what it would be when we're done in terms of all those additions. It's kind of a network of home bedrooms currently.
And when you said the present septic system has failed,
My understanding is just that it's not salvageable or we're
it's not adequate?
Yeah, or it's basically not like a modern design system. Yeah.
But it's not something horrid like a cesspool or a
I don't think so. No.
pipe that goes into the storm drain?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. While I'm sure we will review this as we site visits and all the recommendations, I've been to the property several times, and these additions are very strange, and they clearly are not indicative of the original house. The attic, though, especially I saw in the plans, the restoration of the original staircase, which seems very obvious, it's beautiful, but it very much approaches right to the attic. You really feel like it's a connected space. So will there, even though there's no egress, will there need to be sprinkler systems or anything, even though there's no bathroom, because it really feels like finished space if someone's using it?
Yeah, I believe that 3rd floor will need a sprinkler system. That will be part of the project.
It would, right?
Yeah.
And the only other thing, just purely maybe getting ahead of myself, but I deeply remember this beautiful intricate detail into the windows of the original house that had internal shutters. then we're all still there. And just a little note, I think anything that is salvageable towards the true restoration would be wonderful to see really incorporated.
Absolutely.
So that's it.
I'd just like to drill a little deeper on something you said, make sure that I understand it. So, did I get the impression that you were saying that you were looking to other structures in and around Rhinecliff and Rhinebeck to choose details to add to this building, as opposed to studying this building and identifying the significant architectural features and looking to restore those?
So we're doing our best to understand the existing building and what was there previously. A lot of it's been removed, for instance, the front porch.
Could you have some earlier photographs to go by as well?
Yep, so these are all the photos that we have, and the level of detail is not great on them.
Mhm.
And we've gone in to Star Library and done, like, tried to see if we can find anything closer.
Mhm.
So it's a combination of the two. It's not one or the other. We were looking for more detail and understanding that we want to speak to the local context and the historic context. So these are homes that were also built right around the same time, the 1860s and 70s, that are local. And we thought that those were good references for the porch design, for instance.
I would just continue to encourage you to draw as much from the original structure in terms of detailing as you possibly can, and only at the point that you have absolutely no idea, go to something derived from another building just because it's local.
I think looking at data closer would help that, find what's appropriate in the distance.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm glad someone's restoring it. You can tell it was a beautiful building, what it turned into, it's utterly disgusting.
Yeah. Agreed.
Glad someone's willing to take this on.
Yeah, we're glad to be a part of it.
Okay, well, I guess if there are no other questions, we can move ahead to the procedural resolution.
So tonight we have, for the board's consideration, we have a procedural resolution for Heights on Hudson and Tavoy. Site plan special use permit under Town Code Chapter 125 for demolition and rehabilitation work, as well as associated site changes at 12 Loftus Road within the RL5 and the RCO overlay. Accepting the application, supporting documents is added for further review by the planning board, advisors, and the public. Classifying the action as type 2 under seeker. Scheduling a public hearing for March 6th at 6:15. We will forward this on for review by the CAB, the WAC, HAPAC, as well as Dutchess County Planning. And we delegate 2 planning board members.
I'll go.
At least 2 planning board members. She said that, maybe put it that way.
You may want to,
I'll go, yeah.
Michael and Craig? That pretty much covers it. So may I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So
Michael, second, Craig. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. I'll be in touch with you to schedule a time. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Next up.
Sorry, Melody, if I may, Gretchen, we send the
I'll send you an email with everything.
Thank you.
Next up, Thompson National Park. Site plan amendment in this for football court. And this is coming to us from the park and the town.
From the town board specifically, so I'm here to present this to you as I did last time when we did a site plan amendment 7 months ago. What's proposed now, the town board would like to put pickleball courts in at Sally Mansell Park. And they are proposed, to take place behind the existing tennis courts. If you can picture where they are, right now it's a concrete pad.
It's a skating rink.
Okay, it's a skating rink.
It was.
With a couple sheds on it. There's some bleachers on there for the ball fields. And the proposal is to put the pickleball courts in about where my cursor is. It'll take up about 2/3 of the existing paved surface that's there already. So the proposal is the contractor would come in, they're going to cut the edge of the pavement so they can make it nice and straight. They're going to repave over the top so it's nice and flat, and then put 3 pickleball courts in here. The tennis courts are over here, and the ball field is down here. And really, other than, it's already paved, so nothing's really changing in terms of impervious. They'll be putting paint on the ground. They'll be putting in small fences between the 2 courts to keep the ball, I guess, from going on to additional courts. The biggest change, in my opinion, is really they're going to put up a fence around the court so that it essentially has to keep the pickleballs in the way you do on the tennis court next to it. So what we're looking at is the fencing. They are going to put in a gravel walkway around the edge here. There'll be a door in the fence to get in here. There'll be a door to get in the fencing over here as well. And then this area is going to kind of remain as is. Nothing's proposed here. The existing sheds might move. They're being picked up and moved pretty easily. And the bleachers will have to be moved. We think that they can be put in this area between the fence and the existing pavement. But if they can't, they're portable as well. And the Parks Committee is taking a look at that. The other, I guess, big item that will take place is there are 3 existing trees here. Those are proposed to come down because they pose a danger for people playing on the courts when the leaves fall. They'll get slippery. So there's a proposal to take those down. The town board has committed to putting trees back up and planting new trees in the park as a replacement for those. Don't know exactly where. They want to take a look at where it would make the most sense to plant those trees, but they have committed to doing that. No lighting is proposed with this, no changing to the lighting at all with the park at this point in time is proposed. But I believe that the town board is looking into actually analyzing what's there now to see where the lighting is, how bright it is, and seeing what the needs might be in the future, if there are any changes that are needed park-wide, not just in any particular place, because we know we have had comments and conversations about lighting in the past. So in a nutshell, that's really what's proposed. Utilize the existing paved area to put in pickleball courts and a fence around it.
So that's the town's presentation. Now, do you have any comments
Any comments on the presentation?
as the planning board consultant?
I don't per se, because I helped them work through this. I did like the fact that we're putting new trees in. Never like to see older trees come down, but I think tree replacement is the minimum that has to happen with this. The fence that's going in is 8 feet high. The existing tennis fence is 10 feet high, so we'll be lower than the existing one that's there by a couple
Do they
feet.
settle on a particular style of fence?
I'm sure it's going to be chain link, like the other one, but I can confirm that. I should do that.
Any plans to make the baseball field out of pile of dirt?
There are no plans to change the baseball field at this point in time.
That was an application, right? Was there a proposal to?
For baseball? I don't know.
That, I don't think it really came to us yet, but that was the overall plan,
Yes.
was for those, for baseball, yeah.
As a comment, it'd be nice for them to consider enhancing existing fields that are in play that are at ruins right now before they spend significant money on new things. They go a long way. It's pretty dismal as you get back there, even with new fields and stuff that they have. The baseball fields are pretty atrocious for the town as a whole.
Jim, what's the material finish that goes over the cement? Is it like just a typical court material?
Yeah, my understanding, they have the pavement's not sort of super flat, so they're gonna have to go in and just kind of flatten all that out, and then they're gonna put whatever the court material would be on top of that.
And then the tennis court fence and the pickleball fence is going to be one than the other? Or are they actually going to have the same fence on one side?
I believe they're just gonna do 3 sides.
Okay.
I will confirm that as well. They might be putting in an 8-foot fence there. But the pickleball fence might be a little smaller than the fence. I'll double check the fence type.
Because there had been a row of trees between that paving and the tennis courts that were really, really tall. A few years ago, they took those down. And so there's some sort of a margin there that's,
Let me confirm with the
Oh, yeah.
contractor exactly where that fence is going.
What about the look of 2 fences at different heights close to each other? Around a relatively small set of pickleball courts. Just somehow, it doesn't seem terribly aesthetically aesthetic pleasing.
Yeah, actually, so this is the pickleball court, and there's a separation distance. This is the tennis court fence.
Yeah.
So they are separated. Sorry about that.
And the tennis court area is significantly bigger, right?
Yes.
The remaining stand that will then be outside the pickleball courts, I mean, are they gonna do something to make it nice? Like, is it a little patio? I mean, what will that space, will should be remnants of the cement?
That's my
Maybe
understanding.
convert it to
They're only-
grass or something?
No, they're only proposing to do the 3 courts right now.
Okay.
There was originally discussion about putting in an additional court, but that's not in the proposal. Thinking where the fence is going, it's probably going to stay at 3. But there is potential for addition in the future if they wanted to go that route or put something else there.
Meanwhile, they'll just leave it. No.
Based on the information I got from the contractor, yeah, they're just proposing to cut the edges here, saw cut it, and then refinish it for the purposes of the pickleball court.
And the remaining paved area then will not have the leveling of the surface on it.
My thought is they could put some pea stone over it or something with a picnic table, so when someone's sitting there and they're playing pickleball, at least there's like a place to sit and it looks a little more finished. So it's not just like a hard line and unfinished old cement.
I think if they're investing funding into making a nice looking pickleball area, the whole area deserves to be cleaned up as well, rather than just to leave some portion of it abandoned. I don't think it would be that much more of a financial investment, but it would go a long way toward making it look tidy.
Yeah, totally.
Can definitely bring that forward.
Others?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think when they first installed that asphalt, they just rolled asphalt at grade. There was no drainage provided, and the roots have kind of forced the asphalt up in areas very uneven and shaggy. And, you know, I think kids ride skateboards around there because it's kind of fun, but not so good for walking. And it would be, as Elise pointed out, it would be nice to have a location there where you could watch people play or, you know, gather when it's not your turn yet. Would be a good addition.
Anyone else? Okay, then we have a draft procedural resolution.
Back to my sitting on this side of the table. Procedural resolution for the board's consideration tonight for a site plan amendment and special use permit to install the 8-foot high fence on the property along Rhinebeck Road, accepting the application supporting documents as adequate for further review, classifying the actions unlisted under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded, scheduling a public hearing for March 6th at 6:15. We will forward this on to the CAB, the WAC, and HAPAC, not because this has an impact, but the property itself does have historic background. I don't think they're going to have much of a comment on it, but because of the property itself, I think it should go to HAPAC, just to get the input from them. We'll forward on to Dutchess County Planning, I think, because it is a site plan amendment. And then we need these 2 planning board members to do a site visit.
Would like to go?
I'll go.
Lisa, John? Okay. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Julie, second.
Second.
Thank you, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you. I guess I'll be in touch with you or somebody.
Myself and Johnson, probably, yes.
Okay, all right, good enough. Maybe they can actually time it to another time when you're going to be down here. Make your life a little easier. Maybe, if you behave. Okay, we are now well past 6:15, so we'll move into the public hearing portion of the meeting tonight. First up is Scott Lyons, 6961 Route 9 minor subdivision. Hello, Marie. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very fine, thanks.
I do have a copy of the map because as I was looking at it today, I realized some of the, I guess you have the color copy, so it's not too bad, but some of the lines that were supposed to be dashed were not dashed with regards to the shared driveway, at least on the copy that I had. And yeah, in the legend, all these lines came out straight. So it's like, okay, we'll fix that. So what you have before you is a 2-lot subdivision, and you've seen it multiple times. The issues that were preventing us from proceeding with this subdivision have been resolved, having to do with getting a certificate of occupancy for the house that is on Lot 1A. That has been done. It was originally proposed, I guess, as a barn, and they've gone back to the zoning enforcement officer for approval for a house that has an existing and working sanitary sewage disposal system. And so now we're dealing with the 2-lot subdivision to create parcel 1B. We'll be using a shared driveway because the the frontage for lot 1A is through a wetland, so you can't go through there. So they'll share the driveway. There will be a common driveway maintenance agreement prepared to deal with the maintenance and upkeep of the driveway. And lot 1A will have a right-of-way from the edge of Route 9 up to the property line here, the whole width of the property, because I couldn't fit a curve in there without it going across the property line. I said, you know what? You just have a right-of-way over the whole thing. And then there's a 30-foot wide right-of-way over the existing gravel drive over lot 1A to access the property through the shed. We meet the requirements for lot width, lot area. We show the setbacks, so you're basically your building envelope on the upper lot, because the lower lot already has a building. And we do indicate that there's enough land outside of the floodplain to exceed the required high and dry requirements. So it's pretty much what we have before you tonight.
I think we covered it. I think, we took a look at it, and she does meet the acreage needed for high and dry outside of the floodplain. My understanding is that all the issues we had before have been cleared, so I don't think there's anything left. I might add in the approval resolution, just the maintenance agreement need to be provided, so we have that documented for the shared driveway.
I didn't hear.
I might add to the approval resolution just that the maintenance agreement will be provided.
That's what I thought you were saying, but I didn't hear you.
For the shared driveway. But otherwise, I think we discussed this for a while, from my perspective.
Michael, you've looked at it a lot.
Yeah, I
Any
looked at it,
comments?
and the only thing that was holding it up really was, for Keith's efforts to be, shall we say, remediated. And David's told me that they're all set, they've actually installed the system that has department approval and they've signed off on it. And I was thinking, my understanding is the only problem that we had. So now the property is legit and legal, and that's no longer going to hold up the
Planning board members. None? I doubt there's anyone here from the public that would want to comment on this application, but I will ask anyway. Seeing no hands raised, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Jim, you have an approval resolution?
For the board's consideration tonight for Scott Lyons minor subdivision, asking you to take, reaffirming the prior classifications type 2 under seeker, which according to environmental quality review is precluded. Based upon the submitted information, including reports from planning board members on the site visit, finding the proposed work is consistent with the objectives stated in chapter 101, subdivision of land. With respect to the minor subdivision, finding the proposed action is consistent with Concord chapter 101, and asking you to approve the application inclusive of the plan sheet prepared by Marie Walsh from the revision date of January 26, 2023, specifically authorizing the creation of the flag lot regulated by section 12530B. We will add in there a condition that the copy of the maintenance agreement will be provided with plans, and then authorizing the chair to stamp and sign site plans subject to the 4 criteria listed there.
Okay, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, Michael, second, Louise. I'll poll the board. Craig?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Louise? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you very much.
You exhibited an enormous amount of patience. So,
There you go. We got it done.
thank you,
This is
thank you
important
for
work.
your professionalism on this.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Second public hearing this evening is Alexander Lloyd, Morton Road. Site plan review, the construction of a single-family dwelling in artist studio.
Thank you all. Good evening. I know, thank you, Gretchen. We got the responses from the CPL memo today. I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at them. I know we just received them this afternoon. But for the most part, we've gone through everything, and the great news is the majority of the comments were satisfied. So I think 11 of the 16 were resolved for the CPL engineer. And then the other ones, we're going to gather the information and provide a response. I think the other good news is, I know there's been correspondence, our engineer Langan has been in direct communication with the Department of Health, and it looks like, barring the test results, which so far look very good, that we could be going to a type 1 septic in lieu of the type 2. So we still need to follow up with those results, but that would be very good news with regards to the overall site plan, as well as waiting for the freeze thaw.
Yeah, I guess I would just mention, I spoke to Dave Pearson today at 12:30, and he wants to witness the protest.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what Langan assumes. I mean, so they'll follow up with that. But that was the assumption. And the hope being that we get that scheduled, that happens in the next week or two, and then we're rolling those results in with our
Did you already
response.
do some work?
We already did, and we issued those test results to you all.
But they didn't observe them?
No.
I know. No, I
So
mean,
now you have to do it again?
well, that's standard practice, though. The engineers always go out first just to make sure that there's nothing that they have to accommodate or adjust. And so Langan will go out, make sure, because they don't want to call out the Department of Health if it didn't pass. So they do it. We issued the results to Gretchen. I know that was distributed. And then they'll schedule with Mr. Pearson to come out and witness it. And then hopefully that resolves that issue.
I don't think I'm clear on the difference between the type 1 and the type 2. That you were going with the type 2 by design, and now, because I, from what was sent this afternoon, I gauged that some of the test holes were not satisfactory, in that they were not, that they were draining too quickly, and that it was going to require an additional depth of fill at one of the locations.
Well, the type 2 was assuming a worst case scenario than what they're finding. And so the type 1, the test results that we received was actually passing on all the tests. I don't know if you're looking at a different test result. But the test results, there were 3 pits, and every pit they'll do multiple tests. And so the majority of the tests passed. So the conclusion on that is that all of the pits passed the test that they were seeking for the type 1. But what you say is exactly right, which is until the Department of Health perceives, witnesses the same results, they can't say that it's all in agreement. So the conversations, and I don't want to stand in for the engineer because we can issue that, but the premise is that if we can go with the type 1, that it really simplifies many of the issues.
And it would have been the type 2 that would have required the additional depth of fill?
The additional, no, that's something else to respond to, but again, we have to get to that because at this point, we don't understand if that additional fill is required.
But yes, that's linked to type
Yes,
2.
that's
as a
linked to type 2.
conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So the hope being is if the type 1 works, then that is a moot point. If the type 1 doesn't work, then obviously we have to address whether or not that additional fill is
Right, and I
required.
mentioned this at the last hearing where you don't have a lot of mobility as far as the placement of this pad.
Right.
And if it needs to grow in any direction, it actually is going to grow over the embankment or it's going to encroach further on.
Right. But I think we needn't have to speculate on that because again, what we're trying to do is instead of kind of speculating on whether there's growth or any of that, first cross off whether or not the type 1 or not works.
So it's still feasible to work within the
Yes.
footprint that was submitted earlier?
Correct. It's still feasible to do that, and also we haven't confirmed whether or not that fill for type 2 is required. So in our minds, we still believe until told otherwise that it's still feasible to maintain the current site plan in either scenario, but obviously, we're gonna kind of get the due diligence, get the test results, get the engineer to help us kind of respond to all that and really synthesize those test results into a plan, and then submit that to you well ahead of the next hearing, so we can hopefully resolve that.
And the point that we also made is, if you do have to go with the 6.5 feet of fill, you know, we just want to be made aware of the fact that that might have a significant visual impact that would not have been, you know, noticed before.
Understood, and that's something obviously that we're not hoping to pursue.
I understand, but,
Yes.
you know, when we were looking at prior applications, it was showing 3 feet, I think, as opposed to
Right.
6.5 to 3.5.
Right.
So having to go to that height might impact what's seen from the ground.
Understood, but I guess conversely, if the percolation tests prove that the type 1 works, then that is no longer kind of a potential impact to the site plan, so I would assume that's no longer kind of a stumbling block to the site plan approval. And as well, if for whatever reason the testing doesn't support the type 1, and we can achieve not adding the fill, again, what we want to do is kind of remove the septic as a variable for, you know, not approving in the location the site plan. If that makes sense. Were there any, having seen CPL's responses, any additional questions or thoughts you
I
had?
hadn't had a chance to look at it.
Anything?
Unfortunately, you know, we really love it when we get something in at least a few days ahead of the meeting, so we have a chance,
Instead of 5 minutes.
preferably a week ahead. So, you know, we'll just take time between now and the next meeting to look at it. If we have any questions, we'll let you know.
Okay. And our intention is, again, we feel that, you know, we'll be able to gather the information to respond to the few remaining items. We're going to package that up and submit it with the hopes that that can be reviewed ahead of and responded to for the next hearing. Anything I missed?
So, you were on that timeline question, you were saying, give you all a week at least. Of course, we'll get it as turn it around as fast as we can,
I
but
mean, we would love, if we had it and people had questions, we could ask you tonight, we could be responding to them. But because no one's had a chance to look at it,
Yeah, of
you know,
course.
that doesn't preclude that we aren't going to have questions and we aren't going to be going back to CPL. That's always possible.
I think typically, if you expect the planning board to consider new information, it's supposed to be submitted on an ongoing application 2 weeks before the meeting.
Right.
Whereas for a new application, the information has to be in hand 3 weeks before the initial presentation.
thank you,
Yeah.
that was exactly my question.
Yeah, and understand that this was a two-part, because we did issue the material well in advance, but we understand we had to kind of wait for the response of the engineers.
And that's
Yeah.
unfortunately what having all these moving parts results in.
Understood, understood. I think we crossed off a lot, so I think we can be pretty quick in the responses to give CPL enough time. And then I guess we'll give them also kind of that deadline, hoping that we get their response. Time for you to review? Okay.
Anyone else? Well, I don't see much public left. You seem to be it, so anyone else from the public wish to make a comment? If not, then I would ask for a motion to continue the public hearing.
So moved.
When do you want to continue to?
It's an open question. Certainly no sooner than a month. I mean, obviously.
That was March 6th, the deadline would be the 21st of February.
So you're suggesting we go out 2 months?
I mean,
You've got to get.
keeping it on the track will be April 3rd would be the 2 months.
So far, we've heard Pearson intending to turn around pretty fast on
Right.
septic thing.
I don't think that's exactly the way he conveyed his information to us this afternoon.
But we would have to have this stuff by the 21st time
He
to.
would have to, in order for us to
That's
take
21st
under
February.
consideration
In 2
Dave's
weeks.
comments.
Mhm.
Today is the 6th, within 2 weeks you would have to have his comments. You'd have to get him in the field, you'd have to do your perk tests, he'd have to write them up, he'd get back to us. So that's why I'm understanding
For
Gretchen's.
this meeting, last time we left it let's do the meeting, and then if there's no point, we'll continue again.
Right.
Are you open to that again? That
You
makes
know,
sense to
we-
us?
Dave's busy, I mean, and it's winter. We can't assume that this pleasant weather is going to continue in this February. May actually turn into winter, we can't do quick tests. You know, you get the frost on the ground and whatnot, you won't be able to do that. Which is a consideration.
Understood, but we would also know that in the 2 weeks, that if we didn't get the test in time for the back and forth, you would know 2 weeks before the next agenda whether or not we are going to have the
But we have a
response.
lot of other applications coming in.
Certain.
And things are
Build up,
starting
yeah.
to
Is
jam
there
up.
a meeting between that March and April meeting that we can look to?
There is, but it's off of the track. They each go by a track,
Okay.
so that we don't have that, because we had a big problem. Everything bouncing around for timelines and gotten complicated.
Folks, if this were July, I'd feel differently, but, you know, we're lucky the weather's as nice as it is, and Saturday in my house was April 0.
The first round they did on, the last results they did on Thursday, when it was 40 something.
Yeah, it has had, we've been fortunate that it's been above freezing for a number of days, but as Mike points out, you know, we have another cold snap, and that lasts until
Our normal
March.
high down here is about 34 and 16 at night, so this is very unusual.
We're also
You have a recommendation, Michael? You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd make a motion, I think we should hold it out to two months, just to give everyone a chance to get this done. And you give a chance, Dave also to go over and do what he needs to do as well.
Well, we see, we also need to review the responses that they have as well,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true too, we don't know
That's the other,
what time Chris was going to take either of those other, I guess, 5 items on the list, which is still outstanding.
I understand, but I'm just going to say, I guess I'm just unclear.
We have a motion, I'm going to ask for a second, and then I'll ask for comments.
Okay.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay, no, I'm just, sorry, I'm just trying to understand where the risk is. If we're bearing the risk of praying for good weather and we have to coordinate Pearson's on-site review and get all the answers back to CPL in time for their response to then have you review, and if we miss that deadline, you strike us from the agenda. I'm just trying to
We don't
find
strike you from the
Yeah.
agenda, you're still on the agenda, and
Okay.
we still have, that's kind of the point, I think Gretchen is arguing
Yeah.
procedurally
Yeah.
as the clerk for the planning board. She's not talking about risk.
Right.
She's alerting us to the fact that things are getting busy and we have a lot coming up.
Mhm.
And I think she's just trying to help us create the best meetings for us.
Yeah. Got it.
And that's basically what it is.
So we have a motion and a second? All those in favor? Uh, So we'll schedule you for April.
third.
Thank you. The last two things this evening are two ZBA referrals, Catherine Whitman and Wendy Maitland. Catherine Whitman is 16 Old Post Road. Jeff?
So Heather Whitman has property, she's been before the planning board. She took the house down. She's been before us, I think, actually almost 2 years now, related to this project. And she got full variances from the ZBA. She came back to present to us a couple months ago, and we realized that the ZBA variances had lapsed. So she had to go back to the ZBA to get those variances again. I did confirm with Kim Garrison that they are before the ZBA and going through that process. The variances are essentially the same. They may have changed by an inch or two. As you know, when we did this last time, we were having questions about the numbers. But they all seem to essentially be the same. There's a front yard setback request, north side setback, south side, and an overall building coverage setback. And as we know, it is a small lot, just on the, right about the edge of the village.
Is this the applicant that's bringing all the soil in? And
Yes.
is thereby going to create a basement by putting the basement in and then adding soil around it?
I think part of it is that the agreement was additional, so.
I can't hear you, Michael.
I think they have to put in fill section for the septic, isn't it?
Right up front is the
Right.
And so everything else grading wise is sort of playing off of that.
And so it's a small lot, is that affecting this, all this fill and grading issue? So,
Doesn't affect the fill and grading, but it's in a larger zone on a small lot, so she can't meet the setbacks. The house that's being rebuilt is not exactly on the original foundation footprint, it's a little bit bigger, and it shifted slightly. But given the setbacks in that zone, you really can't build on the lot without variances. How big the variances are would be a question.
It's like a village lot. It's a village lot.
Right.
It's the 10-acre zone, I believe, isn't it?
What's that?
The 10-acre zone.
Right, 10-acre zone, and she has,
Like what, the wetlands in the back?
Yes.
Wetlands in the back, so it's constrained from the back.
it's going to come back to us, and then we're going to be able to see how this grading is going to be accomplished without it impacting the wetland or neighbors' drainage or
Well, also
anything
the
else.
aesthetics, that it's before us, because it requires site plan review because it's on a scenic road, so the scenic aspects of
Ah.
it. In essence, that's what we're really here to look at, planning
I see.
the scenic aspects.
And the variances are dealing with the location of the house. And I'm wondering, does the location of the house affect this grading issue? I mean, is there a best location for the house, given what it is she's hoping to
Not
do?
really a lot of choice.
There's not a lot of room to wiggle here.
I mean, she needs variances on 3 of the 4 sides, essentially. There's not a lot of wiggle. She's trying to put it back essentially where it was. That's how they said it. They shifted 4 feet to the south, maybe,
And I-
based on CPA
And
discussions.
I recall the original house and the original proposal, and the original house was, I think, somewhat smaller than this one is
Yeah.
going to be in
Units was.
footprint. So, you know, the original plan was to renovate that house that was there, correct? When it arrived, is the least.
Right.
So by making the replacement larger, she's increased her difficulties in terms of the setbacks.
And how big is it now?
I don't recall.
1,770 square foot proposal. She needs a variance for 670, that's like 5 square feet.
And what, how many beds?
I don't know.
They could have changed at this point.
I know originally, I think the planning board was okay with the variances. So
Yeah.
just kind of go back as a ZBA issue. That's all we're here to discuss tonight, obviously, is
Right.
the ZBA referral for the variances. It is in front of the planning board, but we've tabled it until she kind of gets through the ZBA process again. There's no table numbers,
Okay.
but she's in front of the planning board.
Is this a case where we're asking them to use their judgment?
So what I put forward, yes, was the requested variances raised no significant planning or environmental concerns, that they rely upon their own study of the facts. I did just have one question related to that, and that is that there is a fence and associated landscaping that's previously required by the ZBA to be put in here as part of their approval last time. It is within the wetland buffer. I did want to raise that. It's always funny when the ZBA requests certain things and it's still before the planning board, it's the chicken and egg, I guess. So that was done, I guess, at the request of the adjacent property owner last time. I guess the property's changed hands since that has occurred.
He's still requesting.
They're still requesting the same thing,
He
okay.
just sent a letter to the ZBA, yeah.
So there is landscaping proposed in the wetland buffer, there is a fence proposed in the wetland buffer. I don't think the fence is an issue, water typically run under, we've had a couple of fences and buffers before, but there are some bushes proposed as well. If that raises a concern, we could mention that, and we should let them know whatever that concern is, or
We should, I believe, you know, there's been some conversations back and forth. The zoning board of appeals has indicated to me that when we have something like that, that we would like brought to your attention, that we should tell.
So they requested it last time as part of the approval, but because the applicant is back before the ZBA again, essentially everything's on the table. My guess is they'll ask for it again. But if the planning board now, because it's back in front of us again, has any questions about it or thoughts or concerns about that fence or plantings in the buffer, I guess now would be the time. It's on the property line between this applicant and me.
I think you can landscape in the buffer, generally, but the fence would require a wetland permit.
In the buffer.
The same thing on Wade Road, we had
Right.
an alternate, the way he was doing his fence,
Right.
in the buffer.
Right. So we should do that.
Is this section of, is that with Montgomery Street, or is it Old Post Road, or?
Old Post Road.
Is it designated scenic road?
Yes, that's why it's for
It's
us.
right where the road forks.
Yeah.
And I don't know, George, if you looked at this before. Yeah, but it sounds to me like when it comes back to us, we should be.
Because what gets me about it is this is essentially a tear down. It's a modest house in a town that's already identified a deficit in modest affordable housing. And it's taking a modest house and turning it into something more grand. And it's just, I think, a dangerous trend, especially when we're struggling to maintain some integrity to our scenic character.
I think the really unfortunate thing here for the applicant owner is that had they built on the same footprint, they wouldn't be before us. They had to Well, they had had approval to, we gave them approval
Right,
to rebuild on the same footprint.
yeah.
And they had,
Sean and I did this site visit, and I mean, I think we all kind of remember the same thing, but she was like, the foundation was compromised, and so we took it out, and I realized you can't do that. And so here they were, and I, just to your point, which I completely agree, we have to address the affordability of houses. I think the house was in quite a bit disrepair, which any modifications to improve it would have cost a lot of money that a lot of people couldn't do either. So I think if you're dealing with that level of compromise, we have to figure out a better solution.
but not with this application.
Exactly, and yeah, not in this way.
Did the demolition occur prior to approval, or did they?
And that was the problem.
See, you know, in reality, when they discovered, as Delise said,
Laid it over.
the way they have explained it to us is when they began to do work, they noticed foundation problems and made the decision without confirmation from the building department or anyone else to demolish it. You know, in retrospect, we can't be sure, but there might have been some ability to work with them. But once they took it, made the decisions themselves, there was no turning back. And we've had to pursue this route at this point. So it's unfortunately taken a long time. And in the meantime, other things have changed, and property owners have changed, and we have to deal with where we are now. So,
I think with the, coming in front of us again, to look at the house, the structure, everything else, I would be comfortable with the current note that was put together, and we'll have a lot of opportunity to provide a lot of feedback.
right. And you're adding whatever you
Just,
are
just
adding.
so we're recommending the fence associated landscaping previously required by the ZBA still be required, but that it will require a wetland permit? I mean, I guess that's a question for the board. Do you want to support that request again by them?
I think from the neighbor's standpoint, the neighbors certainly wanted to see it. I think the landscaping on the front may be necessary because we don't know what the fill section's going to look like for the septic. And the grading may be a necessary screening of.
But it was requested by this board also.
Yeah,
I think you can say that we request they look closely at these issues, and that it's our opinion that fencing in the wetland buffer will require a permit. Okay, one motion.
Motion.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right, the last order of business this evening is the ZBA referral on the application of 636 River Road.
Pull up the Maitland plans as well. This one, I'm pulling up from the ZBA file, because this one is not yet before the planning board. They did come in for a pre-conference meeting, but they have not yet come before us. They went straight to the ZBA. So I just want to pull up the sheet to show what the proposal is. They came before us for the pool last year. For variance for the pool behind the garage. From this one's the corner of, it's at the corner of Upper Hook and River Road. This is a corner lot. So if you remember last year, when they came before the planning board, it was for this pool. It was behind a garage. What they're proposing now is to put, this is the existing house. So they put an addition on here, and then an open area, and then I think they're tearing down the garage and adding this large barn accessory structure here. This is existing today. And so they are in before the ZBA right now for a side yard setback, where it requires 75% of the actual setback. So 75 feet are required for the accessory structure, 20 feet is proposed. They are in because the accessory structure floor area, 1,500 square feet is permitted in total. They're proposing 3,208.75. Guest cottage maximum gross floor area for the guest cottage is permitted at 600 square feet. They are proposing 1,270.5. And the guest cottage is on a lot less than lot size. 10 acres is required in the zone. The parcel is only 1.8, or I think just over 2, depending on where you look. So they're looking for about 8 acre variance from this.
What you're calling a guest cottage is in the barn, right?
That
It's
would
not
be
a separate barn.
There's so Michael you can discuss this better, but
Yeah, it's the second floor of the garage. We first saw plans for that. It showed on the garage, full bathroom, and the music room and an office, into the bed and stuff. And the guest cottage, it's not an accessory dwelling unit, it's an accessory dwelling unit, also has kitchen facilities and things like that. But a guest cottage is strictly for guests, sleeping facilities for guests and things like that, so that's what it did. What I'm going to ask the planning board tonight to do is to refrain from making a recommendation at this point, because I've since learned that they're planning on using the guest cottage area as an office in there for a realty business with the owner of the property and apparently 2 employees, which under our zoning law is a home occupation 2, which requires special use permit and site plan.
Well, you can't even have 2 employees.
correct.
Well, you can't
Only
have
one
home
is-
occupation 2, you can have more than
You can only have 1 employee.
one.
Only one outside employee.
Ah.
You can have as many people who live on the property, only one outside employee is
That's right.
permitted for
That's
the home
right.
occupation. And that's where we're getting tripped up,
Well, that's right, that was the question we had, are we going to consider this a professional office,
which is not.
which is not allowed in this district?
It's in the conference area on that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of issues, a lot of questions.
We need to know specifically what they're really planning to do. I think the owner of the property is in realty, you probably know more about it, and was planning to use this as their office.
That's what I was wondering, if this is to be a primary office, I think it's inappropriate.
Well, it can't be. I mean,
It's not allowed.
Well, with 1 employee, I suppose it could be. But for a primary office, that location, in my view, is inappropriate.
Can I ask a curiosity, if someone's freelance versus employee, does that make a difference in the code? No,
Not
we
if they're-
it's
not
just
if they're
anyone
working.
that works for the company.
Or work and works within that facility, that structure.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The home occupation code specifically delineates the difference between people who live on the property and everyone else.
I mean, it's a very large proportion compared to the actual house. Jim, can I
Very
just
large on a
clarify, it says
small lot.
accessory structure floor area, 1,500 square feet permitted, 3,208, that's just the accessory building, I mean, 3,200 square feet,
Yeah.
just the accessory building.
Yeah, it's
That's a big, it's the size of a house.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's going to go on.
But then,
Well, this is
how
right
big
next
is
to
the
the clubhouse.
addition, am I missing it? How big is the addition on the main house?
So that, I have to look up the numbers, but you can see if I zoom in. This is the existing house right here. This is
Yeah.
addition,
Double
and this is
size.
addition.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to me that what we were asked to look at tonight in terms of the ZBA referral has any relevance whatsoever to what's being proposed.
Well, yeah, exactly, because
I
it actually is going to be a
know,
home occupation
because
too for this. There may be more
One question
parking
is the
and
need
stuff
for
like
this humongous
Well, I mean, I
accessory
guess I'm just
building.
saying that I want us to very clearly, at this point, I could be incorrect, but I doubt that the zoning board themselves has as much information about this application as we do at
They
this
actually
point.
have little more than we did, because Gretchen found this information about using it for a realty office in the ZBA. I guess there was something in the narrative to us, but nowhere else, and maybe other information was submitted.
I met
never
with the
saw it.
architect at the CAB site visit last week. There was no mention whatsoever of being used as a realty office.
Also, could they be events? I know that's not going to be allowed, but like someone hosting stuff in a big space like that. Anyways, so what's our objective right now? Can we go back
Well,
to
so
figure that out?
yeah. So I think it comes down to, the ZBA is asking for the planning board's recommendation on the variance requests. I think we have found in our research. Right, I think we found, at least it seems like we're looking at the need to have further discussion and research on this because the variances, you can either look at it as the variances themselves and whether you have any issues with them, or the variance shouldn't be granted because we don't think the use can be done as proposed. And I think those are kind of the two angles to take.
Well, the variances are asking for, I think, are strictly from a residential standpoint. And there may be uses that are very clearly not residential.
Right, that's why I said maybe
Yeah.
we need to write back that we have
No,
concerns
we-
about the use and variances should be granted until we understand the use that's proposed.
And if the
because-
use should not be allowed, then the size of the barn may not be required.
Exactly.
That's why I think we ought to
I
say
don't know why they're
something.
calling it a barn.
Yeah.
in the first place. I don't know.
What is it? A
It's a
garage?
pool house, a real estate office, and
And a guest house.
and a guest house.
Well, garage too.
Doesn't
And a
it,
garage.
I just think there's much bigger parcels that struggle to have a accessory building this size, let alone on 1.6 acres on River Road.
Yeah.
It's kind of
And
like
I-
a storage unit facility.
That's what's called.
No, I'm saying, but that's what it's gonna resemble when you drive by. It's so
Huge.
gargantuan.
But when we reviewed the pool, we specifically asked about any additional changes. And we asked if the existing garage was sufficient for a pool house.
Yes.
And the answer we got was,
No.
yes. Well, the answer at the time was, oh, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I
I think
also,
there's a distinction to be drawn between granting a variance and just completely ignoring the strictures of, the zoning requirements, because this isn't something that's just a little bit over the line, or maybe, how can you just bend the rules a little bit? This stands in direct opposition to the spirit of planning, which is to
Well, I agree with Edna that they're related, and I don't know how you can discuss variances until you know what's going to happen there. So
Exactly.
the discussion has to focus for them, even for them, on what is going to be built and how is it going to be used.
Well,
And
and
only
it does
then-
raise planning issues.
I will also
And why
tell you
is
it's going to
such
be
a
on the
huge
21st for
building?
planning.
Yeah.
They did not notice their ZBA public hearing, so therefore that's going to be changed to March 10th.
So we'll get those.
So you will have time to review it as planning as well.
and I
Before we have
also
to get
point
back
out
to the
the
ZBA.
historic well disappears from the first drawing to the second one as well.
The historic well disappears from
There's an
the first drawing.
1870s well with the original well
Well,
house.
that's where they're proposing the new parking, right? You're gonna-
No, actually, the well house is not, the site wouldn't disturb that, but they don't note it in the,
So we don't know
One
whether
rendering
that's
to
an
the next.
omission or a deliberate removal of a historic
Of an
feature.
historic.
Do we have elevations?
So eventually this would come to the planning board, obviously, these are the
What the heck is
elevations.
that?
These are the elevations.
That's the main house, or that's the barn?
This is the main house here. This is parallel to River Road, right, going
Yeah.
What
this
does
way.
it look stripy?
That's probably just it's just the way it's set up on screen.
I mean,
But-
it's really a cottage.
Yeah, the main
Right.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, I never.
So this is one addition coming off the main house, which is right here. one addition here, open area, and then this is the big addition, the barn, as I'm calling it, on the other side. So as you go down,
What does it look like from River Road?
this is looking at it from the other side, this would be from Upper Hook, and then that's the side elevation of the barn. Now, from River Road, you won't see maybe part of the first floor, or most of the first floor, because there is a hill there, the house is there, and then there is, there's a rock outcropping and some other things, but you'll see 2/3 of this,
Just
like,
when
for
you
sure.
go over the side road.
Yeah, when you go up Upper Hook, you'll,
It
yeah.
actually has 3 fronting streets.
Yes, it does. And ZBA also requested rendering, so see if it does. And so.
So they won't be before the ZBA?
They won't be before the. They didn't notice it, so they're not gonna notice it
Well,
in
and
March.
unless we get clarification, there isn't much we're going to be able to do.
Well, maybe you can get that on the 21st.
Because that's their initial application, yeah.
Okay, well, that would be fun.
So it sounds like the planning board generally agrees, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are planning environmental concerns related to the fact that the use does not appear to be permitted, and that the variances are tied to the use if the use is not permitted, and home occupation is not permitted, and office use is what it appears to be is not permitted, then the variances should not be granted.
We have, there are significant issues
Right.
instead of just issues.
Significant, absolutely.
I just feel that these are significant. This isn't just that there's a few issues. This is like, the whole thing is significant.
So that brings me to part 2. So that's the use part of it. But the next part is, the variances are to permit a building, additions of this size and scale.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into part 2, which is, so the first part is, we don't think the use is permitted. You shouldn't provide variances for uses and permit. The second is, do we want to
I don't
discuss the
think you can
scale?
comment on variances until they settle on whether they're going to propose to go ahead with this or not. And if they go, what if they decide they're going to a very much smaller building and they're not doing this and that? It might change what variances they would need.
Right. But do we have comments on the scale of the building itself? Which would then
Yes,
say,
yes.
yes. So, I mean, that's the next part.
It's permitted accessory structure to be 1,700 square feet, and they're requesting 1,500, and they're requesting 32.
On a small lot.
So more than
on a
double
scenic
what?
road.
More than double on
They're in a historic structure, historic house.
Okay.
Well, that really means work. I mean, there's nothing left of it. I can think of another recent application that looked almost the same. Okay.
So, significant planning and environmental concerns related to both the use and the size.
That's good.
Generally, I have better language
So
than
we'd
that.
like to make that motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
many seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. All that's left is to entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Oh, Michael, ice cream's waiting. Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks, everybody.